another feature for Java is it can run in most types of networks. Are you using a Wi-Fi connection at home, or are you using a cabled connection at home? Or are you using a peer-to-peer connection? When you say peer-to-peer, you have a laptop and another laptop joined by a cable. Java can run in a network environment, whether you're using peer-to-peer, whether you're using a cabled environment, or whether you're using a client-server environment. As long as there's a network connection, Java is all set to go. All right? Now, this is one of the key features that we like in Java. Java is cross-platform. Now, when you hear the term cross-platform, it means, okay, it can run in any type of operating system. All right? Now, I'm a Java programmer. What I write are what we call Java codes. So the Java codes are human readable codes. So we write what we call a Java source code. And Java source codes ends in a .java extension. Just like in HTML. When you write HTML, you have the .html extension. Those are called source codes or source files. If you have a Python code, you end it with .py because it's Python. So if you write a C++ code, you end it with .cpp. All right? So these are called source codes. Now, source codes are human readable codes. These are English readable codes. So we can actually read them as human beings. Now, in Java, we need to subject our source codes with what we call a Java compiler. So once we have successfully compiled our source codes, it will produce a .class. .class are also known as bytecodes. Now, for simple applications, like later we're going to create our first Java program called Hello World program, okay? So when you create a simple Hello World program, you can have one source code, and there are some instances that you can have one class file. But in some cases, like, let me show you, like the one that we had, that I've shown you, okay? Let me show you, okay? I have 3 Java source codes here called ball.java, ballcomponent.java, bounce.java. These are your Java source codes. When I compiled these source codes, it created several class files. You see that there are several class files, okay? Now, these class files are what we call the compiled versions. Now, the compiled versions, okay, so the compiled versions are not readable anymore. And sometimes we can group these compiled versions into a single archive called the jar file. All right? Now, the jar file is similar to what we call a zip file. So probably you're already familiar with a zip file or what a zip file is. It's almost the same thing as what a jar file is. All right? Both jar and zip are cross-platform, meaning you can use them in Mac, in Windows, or in Linux, or even in Solaris. Now, the main difference between a zip and a jar is their purpose. Jars are normally used to archive classes. That's why we call them Java archive. For zip file, you can put any type of files inside a zip file. You can put an MP3 inside the zip. You can put a PDF inside the zip. You can even put text files inside the zip, all right? But for jar files, classes are the only things that are advisable to be placed inside what we call a jar file. Because a jar file is what we call a deliverable unit. So when your boss or when your teacher asks you to create a game, chances are you'll have so many classes created. So when it's time for you to send or to submit your project, it's better to send them in the form of a jar file. So that's why you're sending only one file for submission. Unlike in classes, there are several separated files that you need to send. Okay? Now, let's go back to the concept of cross-platform. When we say cross-platform, it has the capability to run in any type of operating system. Let's say you have a .java file, you compiled it, it produced a .class. That class file can be executed on top of what we call the Java virtual machine or the JVM. Now, your JVM is the only component that is needed to execute your classes or even your jar files. Okay? Now, what's the importance of your JVM? You don't need to worry what operating system is sitting underneath your JVM. You can have Windows running underneath your JVM. You can have Mac, you can have Linux, or you can even have Solaris running underneath your Java virtual machine. So regardless of what operating system you're using, you can run your Java application. Unlike in other programming languages, for example, in C or in C++, once you've compiled your C code and it created an exe file and you use Windows to compile your C code, you can only run it in Windows. You cannot run it in Mac. You cannot run it in Linux. But for Java, once you've compiled this, your source code, after compiling it using a compiler, regardless of what operating system you're using, as long as you have an installed Java virtual machine, then you can run it in any operating system. So that's one of the beautiful features of Java. You can run it in any platform. All right? Also, Java is said to be secured. Okay, so you don't need to worry about hacking. You don't need to worry about security because by default, Java is said to be secured. You don't need to worry about viruses in Java. Okay, you cannot use Java to create a virus. All right. Now, as you've seen earlier, Java can be used to create GUI applications. Okay, so this is a screenshot of a simple notepad that I asked my students to create. So if you're going to enroll in one of our courses, in our full-blown Java course, you'll see that we will have this simple project. Okay, we will create a notepad. I will ask you to put your name on your own notepad, and then you can start typing on your notepad. You can save the text that you have typed on your notepad. You can load it later. You can close the notepad, or you can even clear the screen from your notepad. Okay, so this is a very simple application that supports GUI. Something similar to the bouncing ball application that you've seen earlier. Okay, and another feature, this is probably one of the best. Java is for free. Okay, but there are versions of Java that you might need to pay a certain fee. Okay, but for now, if you're going to use Java for academic purposes, it's 100% free.
Be sure to join TechDev Academy's workshops and camps, and also read some great articles on their blog page.